So you've got a problem with consistency. Luckily, that's what we're going to go through in today's video. And I'm not going to just smash you with the same old platitudes. I'm actually going to look at the factor above consistency that impacts everything surrounding consistency, so you can tweak with precision and accuracy to get the outcome that you're aspiring to, whether that's greater consistency with your training, with your diet, with managing your energy around going to work, still being present and available when you're going with your kids, whatever it is. We are going to go through that today. But who am I to even talk about this? If you follow me for any period of time, you'll know that I've done a few things that just involve a tremendous degree of consistency. I go on record as saying I am not a great athlete, and nor am I a particularly wise entrepreneur, or I don't have like a natural and innate business acumen. I've achieved what I've achieved thus far through being incredibly consistent. I've run the Marathon des Sables, I've run the Jungle Ultra, I've run the Ice Ultra, and all of those things are quite inherently boring, and you just have to be consistent for extended periods of time. So I'm going to talk from a lot of what I've learned and show you how you can implement that same level of killer consistency. One of the biggest challenges people face with consistency is they set off at an intensity that is just not appropriate for duration. Well, what does that actually fucking mean? Let's get into it with a really easy analogy. Let's look at distance running, for an example. Now, if you're going to run 50 miles, which some of you may have done, some of you may aspire to do, some of you hope never have to fucking do that, but it's something that I've done a number of times. If you look at the concept of running 50 miles, you want to be able to set off and sustain a pace that, give or take a couple of minutes per kilometer, you can sustain really for, between 8 to 15 hours, depending on how fast you are, okay? You're going to stay at that kind of pace. If you set off on a 50-mile race and you're hitting 8K PB in the first hour, you are fucked. You might not be fucked in the first hour. You might not even be fucked in the second hour. But come the 7th, 8th, 10th hour, you are absolutely fucked, because you're writing checks your body cannot cash. Now, the exact same is true on like a daily cadence. It doesn't have to just be like one Herculean endurance event. The greatest act of consistency is getting up and giving essentially sub-maximal effort to something day in, day out, not for just weeks, not for this month, but for years. And be under no illusion, anything that you want to achieve, anything that's worth having is gonna take months, if not years. So we've really got to begin to understand that, because the cost of not doing this correctly will cost you your fucking mental health. First and foremost, the frustration and confusion that comes from this is fucking profound. And if you're watching this, you can probably already relate to that. It will cost you the success that you want. Like, if you want to build the business, if you want to sustain a long-term and healthy relationship, if you want to run ultramarathons, if you want to compete in jiu-jitsu competitions, if you want to do any of these things, it's going to take consistency and endurance. But we're so, I think, amateurish, unprofessional, ill-equipped, under-resourced, misunderstanding of the concept of consistency. And I'm just thinking, for why? So that's what we're going to go through today, is a thing that supersedes consistency. It is a thing that's upstream of consistency, whereby if you understand all of the factors in this bucket, then you're going to be able to tweak and improve your consistency as if you were looking at lines of code in a computer, or as if you were looking at nuts and bolts. You understand, well, this creates tension here, this can alleviate tension here. I tweak this, a little bit more of that, a little bit less of this. All of a sudden, my consistency machine is up and running, and it is away. So the concept I'm going to introduce you to is that which is known as availability.
Okay, so rather than hopelessly try and just talk you through this, we're actually going to create a visual representation of this together. So in the center here, you have availability. Knowledge is not power. Implementation is power. So once you've watched it, grab a fucking pen and paper and actually start doing this thing, because I cannot speak highly enough of how this will improve your understanding of what's impacting what you want to achieve. And secondly, massively improve the likelihood of you actually fucking achieving it. Now, what we're going to look at is, what are your roles, responsibilities, or sort of key performance indicators? What are the things that are really important to you? What are the things that are really the big buckets in your life? And for most people, there's sort of 3 to 5 big ones. Then there's some kind of smaller subsidiaries of that. So let's have a look at what the biggest is for most people. Probably work. Okay, work is the thing you most need to be available for, whether you're running your own business, in which case it's highly important you're available, because otherwise, if you go down, your primary revenue stream goes down and there's no one there to pick it up and you are not going to get statutory sick pay. So it could be your own business, could be where you go to work for an organization. Either way, it doesn't matter. If your work is important to you, then it's really important it's represented in this work. So we've got work. Let's have a look at the next thing that's important to most of you, probably going to be training. Another nice big rock there. The third one for most of the people that I work and speak to is going to be sort of parenting, actually being present and amicable with their children, not biting their head off because they feel overexerted, overwhelmed and under-recovered. And the last is probably going to be sort of like being a partner. So for the sake of today, we'll say husband, could be wife, could be, whatever the fuck the acceptable vernacular is in 2025. So these are the 4 big things that we want to be available for. And I think we can all agree on that. There might also be some smaller things. So there's probably going to be, you as an individual, because we all have individual needs. Can I make that a bit smaller? Boom. Apparently not. Let's try that again. 10. There we go. Let's copy and paste this. The individual might also have sort of being a friend. You might also have, being a child. What I mean by that is not behaving like a child and being immature. But I mean, if you're lucky enough to still have your parents alive, then you're going to want to spend time with those. You're going to visit them, look after them, take care of them, whatever it is irrelevant for now. I don't know the specifics of it, but you fucking do. So when we look at availability, these are all the things so far, for the sake of diagrammatic representation, that we can think of. Now, the problem is there's only so much availability to go around. So let's work on the assessment that you have 100% availability, and this is getting 20%, this is getting 20%, this is getting 20%, this is getting 20%. You've got 80% across here, and then you've got whatever 20 divided by 3 is, like 6.66 recurring percent goes to each of these. Okay, cool. But there's other things that are going to take away from your availability. There are other factors, limiting factors that we have to look into and we have to address. And not addressing them is the single number one leading cause of why people cannot create consistency, because they're not looking on the left of this exercise. They're only looking at all these things they want to do. They're not looking at and actively engaging with the things that are taking them away from their availability. So let's begin to get into those. Now, it's going to be different for everybody, but there are certainly kind of different camps, different kind of buckets, so to speak, that are going to be impacting and affecting and degrading your availability. So let's have a different shape. Let's have bucket. Let's go squares. Why not? That's a bit too big. I didn't like that. Let's try that again. Square. Let's do that. Okay, cool. Now, the big one for a lot of guys is going to be mindset. Okay. And I actually don't like the word mindset. In fact, I fucking hate the word mindset. So we could probably change that out for self-belief, even self-talk. And we'll come to all of this in a moment, so bear with me. I'll come to how all of these things impact your availability in a moment. So we've got that. What else do we have? Well, we have the very real thing, which is going to be sort of logistical constraints. If you work if your commute is like at 90 minutes each way to work, that is a real constraint over how much availability you have for training. As an example, if you have a 90-minute round trip, that is also a very real constraint over how much time you have available parenting. If one of the things you like to do as a parent is put little Jimmy to bed at night, this is going to constrain your availability to do that. So we're going to want to look to factor that in. We're going to look to control for that. You see where we're fucking going with this. What else might we have? We might have injury. Okay, and it doesn't have to just pertain to training. I'm going to make these fonts a little bit bigger if I can, so everyone can see what I am seeing. Bosh and le bosh. Right, injury. Injury doesn't just have to fucking impact your training. Like, who has ever had a bad back or like just chronic pain? Your fucking sleep goes out the window. So now all of a sudden you're irritable as fuck with your children. All of a sudden you are not emotionally available for your wife. All of a sudden your concentration lapses at work and you're consuming more caffeine, which takes me on to the next thing. Then we've got to look at your sleep. I'm gonna fucking get rid of that. Bom, bom, bom. Let's look at your sleep. How good is your sleep? Let's look at how good is your environment. Environment is one that not many people consider, but if you're surrounded by people who just fucking drip shit and moan and it does not inspire you, invigorate or energize you in any way, shape or form, if you're surrounded by more drains than radiators, all of a sudden your availability goes... Your want and willingness to engage and invest time in any of these things is diminished. Now your consistency is fucked. So what else can we think of? And I wanted to go through as many different things that we can think of here as possible. We can even begin to look at traits and attributes. So we can look at recoverability. So if we begin to bang that here, If we look at like your training, for an example, let's pretend that you want to train 5 times per week because you really fucking enjoy training, or you want to go to jiu-jitsu 3 nights per week, but your recoverability is dog shit. Well, then you don't have the availability because you're not recovering enough. So when you train, you overexert and under recover. Now you can't be consistent. You see where we're going with this. We're getting granular depth and clarity over what are the things that are actually holding you back from what it is you want to do and where you want to fucking go. So we've got recoverability. We've also then got things like resilience. Off the back of resilience, so we can then look into stress management. Like, how well are you actively engaging with, dealing with, and managing your stress? All of these things, and we could go on and on and on. Now, it's going to be different for every single individual. Now, with regards to how much availability you need, well, you can begin to add kind of details surrounding this. So let's add some kind of supporting information. Let's say, you work 9 to 5 times 5 days per week. So that needs to be represented. Let's say for here, you want to do, I don't know, what's for most people, probably 4 times per week is an average. Parenting, let's say you want to do 3 school drop-offs and 5 times bedtimes. Let's say that's what you want to do. As a husband, let's say you want to have 1 times date night per week. As an individual, let's just say, you want a 1 times solo date a week. And that's super important. A lot of people might think that's fucking weird. If you're a dude, ask yourself, when was the last time you took yourself on a date? Like, would you want to sit and have a beer with you? If the answer is no, that's a whole different conversation. We can get into that another time. In fact, I might do another video about that. But yeah, like, are you spending time with yourself, getting to know yourself? Do you ever go for a coffee with just you and a journal? If not, there's so much power to be had in that. Let's say as a friend, I don't know, this weekend at the time of recording, it is the Lions' 3rd test of the series. Got an opportunity for a clean sweep, which is what we like. Stick it to the fucking Aussies. So let's say we're watching rugby with the boys, because Saturdays are for the boys. Watching rugby with the boys. Bosh, bosh, bosh. Fucking hell, 3rd time lucky. BOYS, bosh. As a child, let's say you like to have a FaceTime with your parents once per week. Pretty typical. Okay, cool. Now you've understood all the different things you have. When we fast forward and it's like, okay, now we've got children, we've got a family, we've got a mortgage, we've got a job we deeply care about, we've got a business to run, we've got team to do payroll for, we've got all these different things. All of this is going to be represented here. Now you can go as deep and granular as you really want to with this. But ultimately, it's a super valuable exercise to do when you're looking at, why can't I become more consistent? Why can't I just stick to the fucking plan? Because the biggest thing that people say that is complete nonsense is, I just need to be more strict. That is potentially the dumbest fucking thing that anybody says ever, full stop, period, fucking underline. It makes 0 fucking sense whatsoever. And now you're beginning to understand how all this works. This is literally it. This is your life. These are the responsibilities, commitments that you have to adhere to in the pursuit of your goal. Now, how you prioritize all this, again, will be based on, well, what is the fucking goal? And again, we can look at availability factors. We can add in goal importance. What is the most important priority right now? Because let's pretend that actually work's super easy for you right now and you're taking some time off. Well, we could really minimize that. Whereas you're actually training for an Ironman, that's your most important thing right now. That's going to get a greater degree of representation. Now you can begin to really understand what are the things that are impacting your consistency.
Before you come at me, I know this is not the sexiest subject in the world. Trust me, I kind of wish I was like, here's how you can get better results without having to be consistent, or here's how you can do whatever. I know availability and factoring in improvements in sleep and dealing with self-talk. I know all this stuff is boring, but ultimately anything you want to achieve that is worth achieving is going to require that you can sustain a level of commitment and performance through boredom. If you look at some of the things that I've achieved, if you look at bodybuilding accolades, there's a fucking trophy up there. If you look at the marathon of Sables, that fucking thing there. If you look at the Jungle Ultra, the Ice Ultra, which I actually haven't had framed yet, but I want to. If you look at the business that I've built, if you look at any of those things, fundamentally, it's just coming down to, can you continue to turn up day in, day out, week in, week out, month in, month out? And that doesn't mean you can't have fun. In fact, in a later video, keep your eyes peeled for that, I'm going to talk about the importance of injecting fun, pressure drains, excitement, things to look forward to, because that is how you continue to do this for the longest time. It's impossible to beat a man who's having fun. And I fundamentally believe in that, because even if you're trying to compete with them for metrics and KPIs and all that sort of bollocks, even if you beat him in all of these performance indicators, but he's like, I don't care, I was just here to have a great time and I'm having a great time, mission accomplished. Technically, he has already won in the biggest game they're in, which is life. Like, the only test of intelligence is if you are getting what you want. And you have goals that you're trying to achieve and you continue continue to fall short, if you want to become a certain type of person, if you want to be known for your resilience, performance, consistency, whatever it is, and you cannot do it, well then, I'm sorry, but this is really what you've got to look at. If you want to learn more about this sort of stuff, I'm going to leave a link in the description. And at this point, if I'm honest, I feel salesy. You've probably checked out, but you can jump onto an email list that I've built, which is 27 ways to improve your mental performance and your physical health over 27 days. Now, these are lessons that I've learned not only from 12 years in coaching like incredible people, but over 20 years of training now. And these are things I've learned along the way, both from experience and from working with clients and from actual education. You know, I've been to institutes, I've studied a lot. I've been around a little bit now. At 34, I'm starting to get a little bit fucking old. Starting to go grey as well as bald. And I've picked up a few lessons along the way. So if you want to hear more of those, if you want to tune into those, click that link. So that's everything for today, but I'd really value any questions that you've got. If you do have any, punch them in the comment section down below. But otherwise, as I've said, keep your eyes peeled for videos in the future, talking about the importance of fun, play, white space excitement, and also pressure drain. So how to actively engage with stress, how to manage stress. So again, you can improve consistency through availability.